One of my favorite things to do, is play basketball. Now I'm 33 and can't quite move like I used to. I'm still out there with some younger guys, and my bald self. They say I'm fast and got a quick first step, so I haven't lost it all yet. And I actually told my wife the other day, I said, if I can, I'm gonna play till I'm 70. Huge NBA fan, so I love watching it as well. Um, uh, I wouldn't call myself an NBA historian, um, but recent history, when I really started following it, I started following it mostly in the late 90s, early 2000s. I was probably 10 or 11 when I really got into it. I think it was the latter years of Jordan. I wasn't a big Jordan fan, honestly. I mean, obviously, I was a kid back then, so I didn't really get to live through his all his heroics. Um, but in my opinion, uh, through the research and the debates I've heard and things of that nature, LeBron for me is the goat. Uh, he is, in my opinion, the greatest. He's definitely the greatest basketball player I've ever consistently watched. Not my favorite. My favorite ball player of all time is Allen Iverson. That was my guy. That's who got me into the game. Now I never tried to play like Allen Iverson. I just loved watching the man work. He was he was crafty. He was just otherworldly in those years. And you know, I haven't been the biggest LeBron fan his entire career. I was actually a skeptic for the first few years. Uh, he spent 7 years in Cleveland, and then I remember exactly where I was in 2010. It was the summer, I believe it was the summer of 2010. He announced that he was going to Miami. I remember exactly where I was, and I was like, "Oh boy!" Bosch had just announced that he was going to Miami. I believe the day before, or possibly even the morning of the decision TV show that LeBron put on to announce his decision. And so, once he made that decision, man, that was at that point in time, it was thought of to be a wrap. They're going to win the next, like he said, six, seven, eight. I was actually rooting for Dallas that year, and the reason I was rooting for Dallas that year was not because of LeBron. It was actually because of Dirk. I knew Dirk was getting a little up there in age, and this was one of his final opportunities to really get a championship. A few years prior, um, I believe in 2006, the Miami Heat beat the Dallas Mavericks. I want to say it was 4 games to 2. Dallas was up, I think 2-1, and then Miami won 3 straight. And I was telling people back then when Dallas was up, don't count out Miami. They got Dwayne Wade. This man was he had only been in the league for 3 years. Look, look back at what happened. He put the Miami Heat on his back and carried them. Anyway, uh, yeah. So in 2010, I was pulling for the Mavericks. I really wanted Dirk to win because LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Bosh, they were going to run it for the next few years. So this was Dirk's chance, um, and they won it. It was a good series. I believe Miami was up 2-1 this time, and Dallas came back and beat them in 6. And LeBron has never lived that down the way he played in those finals. I think they were playing a zone on him, and he just froze up. Didn't want the ball in the fourth quarter, and just everybody holds that against him. But then the very next year, uh, came back strong as ever. They beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, I believe, in 5 games. But I remember that I was actually pulling for Miami that year, and that was when my feelings for LeBron started to turn. I actually wasn't a fan just yet, but I was pulling for him in a way. But I also really like Russell Westbrook and KD. But I remember in one of those games, I want to say Miami was up 1-0, so it was either game two or Miami was up. I don't think they went up 2-0, so it might have been tied 1-1 in game three. In one of these games, I remember at the very end, KD went up on the left side of the rim. This is all coming from my memory. I've done no research. I'm just talking at this point. But he come up on the left side and he pulled up. Probably right outside the paint. I don't think it was quite a layup, but it was like a pull-up jumper right outside the paint on the left side. And he got fouled. It was clear as day that he got fouled. Or I felt he got fouled, and nothing was called. And I think that's when that series turned, if I remember correctly. I think, Miami went up on the series and ended up winning at 5. The game 6 in I think it was in San Antonio. San Antonio was up 3 games to 2. They had already taped off the court. San Antonio was up big enough to where they were pretty much sure that San Antonio was about to be crowned champions. But at the end of it was almost the end of regulation. LeBron shot a 3. I think it was LeBron shot a 3, missed it, and then Bosh got the rebound. As soon as Ray Allen saw Bosh get the rebound, he was basically sprinting backwards, right? Sprinting backwards, just boom. As soon as he stepped across that 3-point line in that right corner, Bosh delivered him a pass that I don't think it could be any more accurate. He delivered him that pass, and he was he may have already started his shooting motion before he got the ball. He got it and just shot it and just nailed it. And we all know that they repeated, and that very next year, San Antonio came back. It was a rematch. And San Antonio, I believe, beat Miami, and I think they beat them in 5 games. And then that was the summer. So he spent 4 years in Miami. That was the summer where Cleveland had that number 1 pick. Andrew Wiggins was coming out. Cleveland traded that number 1 pick for Kevin Love. And that's how Andrew Wiggins ended up in Minnesota. And then Cleveland went to 4 straight finals. Earlier in that playoffs, Kevin Love got his shoulder basically ripped off by, who was that? I think it was Kelly Olynyk. If it wasn't Kelly Olynyk, it was somebody that resembles Kelly Olynyk. I can't remember, but I remember he just jerked his shoulder out of place, and Kevin Love was walking off the court like, yo. And I think that was maybe the second round, so, Cleveland lost its big 3. Now it's down to LeBron and Kyrie, and, I still think they would have won, but then Kyrie got his knee broken, I believe, in game 1 of the finals, and so, now what? The next year, we all know what happened there. OKC loses. They had a 3-1 lead on Golden State. Golden State comes back. Klay Thompson went crazy in the last few games of that series, and then Golden State had a 3-1 lead on Cleveland. And I was actually, I knew Cleveland still had it, even after losing 3-1. I was like, Cleveland's going to win Game 7, take it to Game 7 and win this series. And then, I knew that Draymond Green was going to do something crazy. At that point, he had he was one technical shy of a suspension. I believe it's 6. I think the 7th in the playoffs gives you a suspension. He got that 7th technical by swinging swiping, I should say, at the testes. Right, he was tested or testing, whatever test word you want to use. but he was suspended. That definitely changed the tide. We all know Cleveland came back. Um, Tight game 7. Kyrie hits the shot, but before that, LeBron gets the block. One of the greatest series I've ever seen. Then the next 2 years, KD was on that team. They were unstoppable. When he was in Miami, I was not a fan of his. I was a big Kobe fan. As a matter of fact, um, that year the Lakers played Orlando in the finals. That was supposed to be the Lakers and Cleveland in the finals, but Orlando beat Cleveland. Um, but people were telling me back then LeBron was better than Kobe, and I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? But Kobe, man, I was like, are y'all crazy? Kobe? Rest in peace, Kobe. But Kobe's always been one of my favorites. He came in the same draft as AI, so I grew up watching Kobe. I don't know, in my opinion, LeBron's the greatest. I have it's not a bobblehead, but it's one of those figurines. I think it's about that tall of LeBron. I'm gonna take it in my office, keep it in the box, put it in my office. I just kind of want to discuss my feelings about the game I love.